Hihane washte del.
Hihani washte to all of you who may be listening in. I know it's this topic is pretty much something that I think would be a good discussion for a lot of people sitting around and talking about our dysfunctional lifestyle. With our society nowadays, especially with knowing so many cultures come together, but I wanted to go ahead and talk about some of our cultural traditions and rituals that I believe sometimes causes some havoc and some problems and some issues, I guess whatever you call it. But I will use some of the analogies using our Lakota way. But first of all, let me go ahead and say a little prayer so we can all kind of absorb and think and process, and hopefully that we could be aware. What I talk about is basically just awareness for all of you and my own experiences and my own perceptions of the way I see things. I think it really is a good thing because I try to collaborate a lot of our society where I live in, just being out in society and seeing things, but as well as stepping back into my world of the Lakotas, So this is pretty much of a deep topic, and I think I'll probably go on for next month's show too. But let me say a quick prayer here, and we will get started. Ambetule tonkashila uyakpupunka ake ambetu washte wiki lila kate ash ungana hina neso ya bi tonkashila doske unaha doske uyak de he tokata ke uyak de hina tonkashila na ambetule na uyanka hina ejustikel hina iukchona ha doske Lakota ki ha unkuna ha doske wiukcham hina tonkashila ablezakte na ha you ha na uyanka hina dagni shichunka ki pakdeshne na ha ehash ungana daku washte eluhiukte tonkashila ho hechitu. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I had a real good thing happening here. I guess sometimes I really try to observe our way of life and how people function, and especially today with so much things happening with the immigration and people coming in, and it really made me really think about a lot of the ways that really affect a lot of us because we are all so different, and I don't think a lot of us accept each other for who we are, and to know that we forget that we are all one. We are created by the Creator, and we are all one human race. And so when we see, or when I see things happening in regards to people not wanting other people here, or we hate other people for who they are, that is pretty much of a dysfunctional way. And I just wanted to go ahead and talk about some of the ways that I see dysfunction with Lakota people. And one of the things I wanted to go ahead and say, first of all, is I do not speak for every Native American, and I do not speak for all Lakotas. These are my own perceptions, and these are my own experiences, and I know I was challenged quite a bit this past week going home of why I do the talk show to non-natives instead of talking to natives. But I have my reasons for that. I think it's for me why I do this. I've been given an opportunity to educate and to make aware of people knowing our ways. From my own experience, and my own way of seeing things, because I live in both worlds. The Lakota way when I get the opportunity, and then I jump back into the Dominant Society's way. So these are just some of the things that I see happening with what I see out there. I would probably start with saying that if you all think about it, American Indians are the most cultural diverse ethnic group in America. There are over 580 some tribes in the United States, and people don't really understand that. In fact, one of the dental students that was working on my teeth this past week had no clue as to how many Indian tribes were in the United States, and that's how far we have gotten. We don't even know each other. And so we had some good discussions as he was working on my teeth. And this is a young student, a college student, that's going to go ahead and be out there. He'll be working with different ethnic groups. Hopefully, that he will open up his practices to work with different. How would you say, ethnic or different races?
Yeah.
Of people.
Right.
And it really dawned on me to know is how far have we gotten not to know each other, and what causes a lot of the issues that we have. We have become so dysfunctional in our society because of things that we do not understand. We don't talk to each other. We don't try to be aware of one another. Why we think the way we do. Why we act the way we do. Why do we do the things that we do? Mm-hmm. And we're all so different. And I just get tired of Native Americans being put in one box. I know we have some commonalities, some similarities with things, but God, there's so many different things about us. I think each tribe, bands, or Kiosh by each one of the societies, or like I say, the tribes have their own mores, taboos, and laws that were created from way back when. And the whole thing about it is we haphazardly walk through some of our cultural traditions and rituals by being given guidance by our elders. But when you really think about it, is who makes up these laws? Who makes up these rules? And it's been passed down orally. There's no written documentation. There's no written laws. And so as we lost a lot of our way of life, we haphazardly walk through and having people tell us, to guide us on what we're supposed to do. But I can guarantee you that the way I grew up was from the time of conception. We were taught about the way of life, the religion, the spirituality of being connected to nature from the time we were young. Mm-hmm. And so as we see some of this, the rites of birth, from the time that we're born, they do a certain thing until the time of death. And in between, we have to really understand who makes these laws. Why do we do the things we do, and yet we can sit back and criticize one another because they didn't do these things? And I think it's just because, as I see it, is people really don't have anything to go on, with the written laws or documents to say this is how you want to do it. Because I think one of the things is we're all understanding that we all are our own individuals, and we're not, even though we may be a collective group, we all have our own ideas, we all have our own minds, and we all have our own journeys.
Well, Del, there's a question in the chat room, or a thought. that I happen to agree with personally. How do you feel about this? Rob is saying, would it be safe to say that Native Americans are as diverse as Europeans who generally identify with their nation? German, Scottish, there's an entire European continent where, people consider themselves to be French or German and very, very different from one another. And yet living on the same piece of land.
Again, the whole concept for me that I think about is America is a land of the free. I think history tells us, that Europeans, they didn't like what was going on over there because they really didn't have no freedom to practice their own. Just like what I understand, the paganism, that happened over there, Christianity come,
right.
It pretty much set the pace to have people migrate to America where it's supposed to be free,
right.
That we could do what we want.
Right.
And then when we all got here, or, when they all got here, it was put in the melting pot, you know?
Yep.
And I've seen a lot of communities. I've been out there, throughout the United States, and I've seen different communities, like even on the reservation, there were some German people, that were there, and I'm sure they practiced because I know their foods were out there. They shared the foods and everything. So I would probably say that they practice a lot of, their own ways, their own little celebrations that they may have, their own holidays.
Mm-hmm.
We don't understand those things. We don't. As Native Americans, growing up, we had our own ways, and I just, why it came to my mind, but the movie Dances with Wolves, when they were first given coffee, and they were all sitting there, but it's just, some of the things that we don't know. This is why it's important for us to get to know one another, why we dance, why we wear feathers, when the men dance, there's reasons.
Mm-hmm.
But because it's just, some of the ways we don't understand. People decide to criticize or to judge people.
Right.
So there's a lot of dysfunction in regards to what causes us not to know one another because, like I said, there's so much judgment, so much criticism.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, back to saying that we had no laws, or there's no written documents, and how much of it do we haphazardly make up to have us conform to somebody's way,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just a whole big topic of knowing where this could go, with everybody's input and the question that they may have.
Right. Well, exactly.
But as I was saying from the beginning of time, where we grew up knowing what kind of rituals were done, we had the naming ceremonies, we had the 4 days, different things that happened as we were growing up, it all changed because one thing that I can probably say is we have a difference with the Anglo society, the dominant society, is their expectations. For me, this is my own thing. I think dominant society, the way things are happening, is they expect change from generation to generation. Whereas our Indian people, when we talk about 7 generations back, 7 generations forward, we expect that the generations will repeat themselves. I don't know if I'm making that clear.
You mean that they'll carry on the traditions rather than change them? Okay.
Well, yes. We don't see the concept of changing as Native American people. we don't see the concept of changing because of the modern technology. Everything is changing, whereas we try to hang on to our traditions the way they are.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
Just for example, just finally being able to practice our religion, our spirituality through the Sundance. It's been, since 1978. It hasn't been that long. But when we were given back a lot of or when we were able to practice all that was taken away from us, we're still stuck in the past, where a lot of us don't see it doesn't apply in this generation or this world.
Mm-hmm.
And I talked about that before. Sometimes it's like, all the values, our Lakota values, have become dysfunctional. I mean, I wouldn't say all of them, but some of them, like say humility, for example. I'll use that for example. One of our Lakota virtues is humility.
Mm-hmm.
And that's to be humble. When somebody says bad words to you or they do something to you, you don't react to it in a negative way. Sometimes a lot of the elders just don't say anything. But I see it where how in the world do you suppress your feelings? I know that's not a good feeling, because I had suppressed my feelings for so long with the boarding school, and boy, did I become an angry person in my
Mm-hmm.
younger days.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's very dysfunctional, when you can suppress your emotions.
Right. I've watched that myself, that, somebody can go off on somebody else, and rather than defend, they'll simply swallow it in that moment. And you're right, Del, that isn't healthy to just take that on.
Yeah, and then the compassion. Wachante ogunanke, to have a lot of compassion. Yes, it's good to have compassion, but I think, sometimes when you overdo it, you're enabling somebody, because they know there's givers and takers out there, where you give, so this person knows that you're going to give, and you're not helping that person.
Right.
And that person is taking advantage of you.
Mm-hmm.
So I really look at some of the stuff, and like I say, they say respect and be honorable. Well, that's not happening in today's world. We don't even respect and honor ourselves. If we had that, we would respect and honor everything. It just happens for a few people.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like the greatest dysfunction comes out of carrying on the traditions, and who's setting what a tradition is and how it should be done? I mean, we know that there are certain, as you say, mores and guidelines, but every person has really their own way of expressing it. Do you feel as though perhaps some of the dysfunction comes in not allowing?
Well, I would probably say, I think we all have gifts. I think my insight, my perception is, I think Indian people have been a collective group for so long through past generations, and for some of us that were taught, the old ways, they thought collectively,
Mm-hmm.
and now we don't.
Okay.
I mean, I don't.
Are you there, Del? I think you may have accidentally muted yourself for a moment. Okay, everyone. Well, I think I'll give Del a phone call back and see what happened. It's always interesting during the time of retrograde, and when we're talking about very deeply held beliefs and ways of being. And let's see if we can get her back on the show. We'll just take a break for a moment. And for those of you that are in the chat room already with Del, if you have any questions for her about the subject that she's talking about, I know that she would be happy to address those. And as Del always says, this show really is based on her own perceptions and her own experiences in life rather than anyone else's or a set way of being.
Hello?
Hey, Del, we lost you there.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. I had to switch phones. I think this one died. Can you hear me, though?
Yeah, we can hear you perfectly fine.
Okay. All right. Well, anyway, I think I left off with a long time ago. Everybody had a defined role and responsibilities within the tribe or the band, who was made chief, who made the rules, or whatever. But it was a collective decision that was made by all the people that sat in the council.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't happen anymore with some of our because so much has been lost, so much has been taken away from us. Now I think it created the issue of everybody disagreeing because we don't really understand one another. And of course, modern technology, long time ago, people didn't travel very far, to see a medicine man, whereas now you have automobiles that you can travel, and then you're trying to understand, oh, geez, this wasn't the way I learned,
Right.
But they don't understand for the fact that there's different ceremonial ways done by different bands. We don't understand that, or like the animism, people really didn't understand a lot of that. Mm-hmm. So then nowadays, or now, I think, a lot of our young people are getting educated where I hope that they understand that, but, that we can see. I know for the first time, here's an example. We used to have one sun dance on a reservation in Pine Ridge, and that was when I was growing up. And so you just had four, and people there was four medicine men that, people kind of knew, and so they conducted the sun dance. And we were all used to that until the freedom of religion came about in 1978. Then all different people sprung up all over, claiming they were medicine men. Mm-hmm. And it was like, what? Mm-hmm. That person's a medicine man. They're not doing it that way. How come? That person doesn't know how to speak Lakota, but he's a medicine man. How do the spirits, how do the Tungashilas understand, because, mm-hmm. or how do they understand? How do they interpret, because Tungashilas speak Lakota.
Uh-huh.
But it's just to understand, that, wait a minute, if we could think deeper than that, maybe these people suppressed their gifts.
Right. Right. There are many ways of communicating with spirit, to your point. Yes.
So I think it's just, again, it's not accepting the way things should have been.
Mm-hmm. And how do you see that playing out for yourself, the disagreements about, or the misunderstandings about all of these things? How do you see that play out in day-to-day between people, Del?
Well, I think we don't, for me, I think that's kind of a difficult situation because I would probably say the environmental oppression, I say the doom and gloom that lies over our people, they haven't really learned to heal. We still have to have a lot of healing. Mm-hmm. Once we heal ourselves, I think, with Tungashila's way of healing, ourselves, we will probably understand, but we still need a lot of healing.
Mm-hmm. So,
I think you've been on the reservation to know what kind of goes on, but don't you think healing is part of it?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. And it's hard when people aren't open to the idea of personal healing or personal accountability or whatever it happens to be. When you're stuck in those times of quarreling or disagreement about how things were taught or how things are supposed to be, or who's even privileged to understand or to participate, with regard to your show that you do once a month, for whatever anyone may think about in their own personal world about the fact that you share these things with non-natives, the amount of healing and understanding that it brings to those who are not native is incredible, because ignorance creates fear. And ignorance and fear creates so much misunderstanding and hatred. And so, being on really both sides of that river, what you provide for everyone really is a wonderful place to learn and to understand, rather than to fear or to perpetuate what has always been taught since the first boats arrived, whenever that was. Perceptions about Native American people. You help to break that perception and bring a different perception for people. They may not agree, but they may at the end of the day say, oh my goodness, at the bottom, or at the very least, they're just like us. They're moms and dads and grandmas and grandpas, and they're people just trying to have a good human life. And
exactly.
And to me, that amount of understanding, anyone who could provide that about anyone. I was ridiculed a few years back and harshly chastised for talking about being adopted. And at the same time, although I was being harshly chastised for talking on my radio show about being adopted, the amount of learning and understanding and other people who could say, oh my goodness, I didn't know that, or I'm not alone, brought healing. I think, to your point, Del, understanding brings healing.
I think so. I really do believe that, and I think this is one of the things that my father had always said was, be a thinker, be a deep thinker, and
yes.
The way that you can do that is in solitude. Just observe. Don't say anything. Look around, and everything gives you a message, and everything gives you a lesson. And I think I kind of grew up that way, and I still do. I really love to learn, but I think one of the things that can heal a lot of people is to understand one another.
Right on, Del. My dad said the same thing. Don't become another ignorant person. There are enough ignorant people in the world. Don't be another one. If you want to know something, ask, and ask respectfully. And if you ask someone something respectfully, you'll probably get a great answer. And that way you'll learn and you'll understand, and you won't just be ignorant.
Exactly. And I think this is one of the things that I really believe, cultural dysfunction for me. I've thought about this. What's happened in today's society is a leader's behavior leads to other thinking it's okay to do things, the way it's okay. It's okay to say harsh words to people,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. It's our leaders, behavior, and I see that happening within our infrastructure of our tribal council. When we see leaders as being role models, that they should lead the way with compassion, to help people and to be generous and, to be wise enough to lead in a positive way. When you fight amongst the ultimate decision, it doesn't work. I think a dysfunctional culture will lead to decline in performance and productivity, even within families. Mm-hmm. You can't move forward.
Absolutely. I agree with you, Chue.
But those are just, there's just a gamut of things that we can talk about, and I think we're probably running out of time. Mm-hmm. But let my mind keep going, I've got so much to say. And when we don't heal ourselves, just like you said, it brings out a lot of resentment, a lot of fear, mm-hmm. a lot of anger towards somebody else.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And I think we all still need a lot of healing, especially the Native American people, because, for so long we were suppressed. For so long our way of life was not the right way.
Mm-hmm.
And now trying to find our spirituality, but yet at the same time it's that bucket of crabs effect that we always say is, somebody's trying to climb out of the bucket to venture on their own, or to maybe lead in a good way, is pulled back down into the bucket.
Yes, exactly. Understanding. And so to quote your dad and my dad, you know what? Just try to understand and do so with respect. Respect is a huge word. From listening to your words today, I think it comes down to respect for self and showing respect for others in approaching things and asking questions and agreeing to disagree, rather than your way is wrong and mine is right and warring over that, but having respect.
Exactly. And I think, for so long, like I say, humility, be humble, don't say anything out of respect, don't say anything, keep quiet. But when we internalize our feelings, literally it gets us sick mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually.
Mm-hmm.
It gets us sick. And we tend to have hate, we tend to have guilt. Our self-worth, our self-esteem is affected. And I know I lived it, because I used to feel so guilty. Just for an example, while we followed the society's rules of having Memorial Day where we put flowers out on graves, we could do that any time. I didn't understand that, because when I was living in Albuquerque and I couldn't get home, and I was made to feel guilty that I couldn't get home.
Right.
So, those are just some of the dysfunctional ways of our cultural ways. I don't care if it's Lakota, I don't care if it's a Dharma society, but even these holidays.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. Everybody has their own way of interpreting and being, and it comes down to respect and compassion and good boundaries and healthy boundaries, and trying to take a look from the other side.
Yeah, I really believe that, and I think, not knowing each other, of course, we're also, like I say, we can define a group, an ethnic group, about what they're all about, as Native Americans, we're probably known as drunk, lazy Indians, when they don't know the truth.
Exactly.
That there's good and bad in everybody,
Exactly. And those are some of the perceptions, sadly, that do still exist. And your gift for being able to connect different cultures, you are helping to eradicate that very wrong perception of Native Americans. And that's one of the gifts that you bring to the world, Del, is that you are honest about things. And those that come to your classes or to your Wednesday morning show with prejudices or teachings that they were taught by whomever they were taught by about who and what a Native American is, you help to educate. And education and respect is really key. So thank you for being somebody who does that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, because that's my intentions, is just knowing is awareness, awareness to all, because I know I can talk to people who are willing to learn.
Yes.
Like I had said, I will teach those who want to learn.
Yes. Yes. That's all we can do.
Well, I guess next month we will continue this discussion. I think it's a good one. I think people who are listening, I hope that you have questions, because it would be a great subject to really think about what we're doing with our own lives, how we perceive others, and how we live our lives,
I agree. Thank you, Del.
Well, thank you so much, and you all have a good day. Doksha Ake.
Doksha Ake.